Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is JHBC Book Club Edition, and we have a real treat today for a book that was absolutely phenomenal. So on the show, we have Lily Brooks-Dalton. She is the author of the novel that we read this month called The Light Pirate. And it's one of those where after I read it, I just literally could not quit thinking about it. I dreamed about it. I've talked about it. I gave it to my daughter to read because I knew she would love it. It's so original and creative and fascinating, kind of haunting. So the story unfolds in the near future in a climate-ravaged Florida. Okay. And so we're looking at like Miami underwater, for example, and the state going underwater. So that's sort of the bones of the story. But at its heart, it's about resilience. It is about reinvention. It is about adaptation and community. So the characters are just unforgettable. So is the story and the way in which she paints a picture of a town slowly going underwater and becoming abandoned by like officials and government. And then all of a sudden it's just like the Wild West. Like the people that decided to stay are absolutely off the grid and on their own. Okay, I'm saying too much about it, but it is such a good book. And the story is so, so interesting. So let me tell you a little bit more about Lily. Besides being a novelist, her first book was a memoir called Motorcycles I've Loved, which she mentions at the top of this interview. She's just interesting. She's an interesting person. And all of her interesting experiences show up in her work. And you just can see sort of the range of experiences and exposures that she has had in her life. She also wrote Good Morning Midnight, which was adapted into a Netflix film called The Midnight Sky, starring a very little known up and coming actor named George Clooney. So good on her. So she brings this beautiful blend of really unforgettable storytelling with this very imaginative world building. She builds this world of water for us. And it's a fascinating read. I really, really want you to read it, but I'm excited for you to hear from her today because always getting to hear about how a book has come to be from the author is one of the most special things that I feel like I ever get to do when I get to interview fiction writers about the world they created. So anyway, lucky me and lucky us. So without any further ado, let's welcome the incredible Lily Brooks-Dalton to the show. All right, Lily, welcome to the pod. Delighted to meet you.
Thank you, Jen. It's really fun to be here.
Okay, so for my book club, we have a group. There's a group of us that read in advance, so we're constantly reading, and we have a spreadsheet and making notes. Who thinks what? What do you think about this one? And excuse me. So Pepper, who's actually the producer on this interview right now, is the one who read The Light Pirate, and so he puts it in to the metric and said, "I think this is worth a look." And I read your book. I am telling, and this is months ago, of course. I'm still thinking about it.
Aw.
I have never read anything like it. It is so original
Thank
and
you.
haunting and good and human. And I'm so much clapping for you for coming up with such an inventive, like wonderful novel. I loved it.
Thank you, Jen. That's so sweet of you to say. I love to hear it, obviously.
Of course you do. And so, right now, book club is we're reading it right now. And so we're right in the middle of the month. This will come out later, but and so the response is really strong, as I'm sure you know, because this
I'm
story is so
excited.
evocative. So before we get into it, it's really fun. Such a fun factoid that you are a motorcycle enthusiast. It's
Mm.
just, I like this. It's so interesting and different. Can you just tell us a little bit about that piece of your life? Because it is one of your great loves.
Sure. Yeah. When I was younger, I think when I was 21, I started riding motorcycles. And it was, yeah, a really big part of my life for a couple of years. I've kind of taken a step back
Hmm.
since I don't have a motorcycle right now, but I don't know. It was a really fun and powerful outlet for
Uh-huh.
me for a while, and getting to kind of feel, I don't know, I was kind of figuring out who I wanted to
Hmm.
be, and getting to do that on two wheels was a lot of fun.
Yeah, totally. I grew up with a motorcycle dad
Oh,
and
fun.
then had a big motorcycle family. So I
I
have
love
spent
it.
many, 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 many good hours on a motorcycle, and there's just something about it.
There is
Uh-huh.
something about it, isn't there? It's
Yep.
so different from being in a car.
Yep.
It's like you're inside the landscape in a whole new way.
That's right. I have worked out so many things on a motorcycle because
Hmm.
your brain just, I don't know, it just opens up a whole chamber.
It's
It's,
like being battered by the wind
yeah,
just helps you think.
it does. It does. It's one of my best thinking tools. So, okay. I'd like to hear, if you don't mind, can you talk a little bit first about your path to becoming a writer and what has your story arc looked like up until now?
Yeah, sure. I think, I mean, this is so much easier to say in hindsight, but I think I always wanted to be a
Yeah.
writer. And it was just a matter of figuring out that that was a goal worth working toward.
Mm,
There's like this whole, like, oh, you want to major in English. What are you going to
uh-huh.
do with that?
Sure. Totally.
Like,
Totally.
um, and I didn't go to college right away,
Mm,
so it didn't feel accessible to me for a
hmm.
while, even though I always had a journal. I was
Yeah.
always so much better at figuring out even just what I felt
Mm,
through writing it down, as opposed to even thinking or talking out loud. It was just like my medium.
mm,
And then when I finally did get around to going to college, I had this professor who was reading some of my essays about riding motorcycles and
mm.
how important that was to me at the time. And he was like, this could be a book.
Yeah.
And just like having someone that I respected so much
Mm.
say that to me kind of cracked open this door of like, could it? What if
Yeah.
what does writing a book mean? Like,
Totally.
what does that look like? Let me try it. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you got to experience that so early,
Yeah.
and just really set your feet on this path, which is clearly the path you're meant to be on. You're such a great writer.
Thanks.
And I am just so curious. I want to hear from you how this story came to you. Did you start with a character? Did you start with an issue? Did you start with an idea? Novelists are so interesting to me because all of you get your stories differently.
Hmm.
Some novelists get it just downloaded, fully baked, right into their brain, and they already know the ending, before they have
Yeah.
started. And then I love to talk to other writers who are like, oh no, I kind of discover chapter by chapter what my characters are going to do. They just let me know and they just tug me along. So, can you talk a little bit about the origin story of the Light Pirate and sort of your process to bringing it to life?
For sure. I am also endlessly fascinated
Hmm.
by writers' processes.
Yeah.
Like, it's so different. And I
Yeah.
think it's different for every book, too. Like, I
Maybe.
have had different experiences
Yeah.
every time. But with The Light Pirate, I think the seed really came from when I was at a writing residency in Key West,
Mm.
in Florida, and I was working on something else, and it was not cohering, it
Hmm.
wasn't working out. And there was a hurricane coming, and just watching the island swing into action
Mm.
and know exactly how to prepare and like where you park your cars so they don't get flooded and who has to leave and who
Yeah.
stays, and watching that unfold in front of me as a bystander who is just like already struggling with this project. I was like, wow, this is really dramatic. Like there's a
Mm.
lot of really interesting tension
Mm.
in this moment of preparation. And the hurricane ended up like kind of bypassing us. We got some rain, we got some wind, but
Mm.
it didn't hit us directly. But that moment of preparation really stuck with me for a long
Mm.
time, and I couldn't get it out of my head. So
Mhm.
by the time I was ready to give up on the project that wasn't working,
Yeah.
that was the first thing I thought of, is like I was just thinking about all the different ways that a human being could react to that kind of
Yeah.
energy, you know, that
Mm.
kind of dread and fear and excitement too, you
Mm.
know, like there's this element of like, ooh, how big is it going to, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so that was kind of where I started with that scene between Kirby and Frida,
Mm.
and they're really at opposite ends of that spectrum and
Yeah.
how they're responding to it. Yeah,
Mm.
that's where it started.
But then you had the sort of idea to set it in the near future and
Mm.
to add this complex layer of climate change. And it was just fascinating to read your interpretation of possibility, of what, where we are, possibly heading and what that could look like in a day to day experience. And then, of course, it's just so incredibly metaphorical. You've got Wanda named after the hurricane, and she's evolving, as is the land, over the
Hmm.
course of the book. And so, I'd like to hear you talk about Wanda a little bit and your experience writing her
Mm.
and who she kind of is to you, because she's just not forgettable. That's for sure.
Oh, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I mean, I love Wanda. I have a,
Hmm.
a really soft spot for her
Yeah.
as a character. You know, I think we always put pieces of ourselves into our characters.
Sure.
Like there's some of me in Kirby, there's
Mm.
some of me in Frida, but um, I think, you know, that little girl who doesn't really have any friends and doesn't really feel like she belongs, but is at the same time so tethered to her environment.
Mm.
That's me for sure. Growing
Mm.
up in the middle of nowhere, Vermont, and just like running around in the woods and having that kind of be my
Mm.
safe place.
Mm.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that's what makes Wanda feel personal to me. But like as the focal point of the book, you know, all these other characters are kind of in constellation with her.
Hmm.
But she's really the North Star and like the Polaris of what's happening. And I wanted, yeah, I wanted all those different pieces in the book, all those different characters and those
Mm.
different reactions to all the the things that are unfolding, you know, the dread and the violence and the beauty, like all the different pieces, you know. But then at the center there's Wanda, who's kind of, as you said, evolving alongside the landscape.
Mm.
So pairing them together and having that journey be kind of
Mm.
intertwined was how I wanted to center the book.
For people listening who haven't read it yet, because we also share this interview on the big channel outside of
Hmm.
book club. Um, it's it's set in the near future when climate change is wreaking like real havoc, and Florida is going underwater. And I know it's just such a small line, but I was telling some of my friends about this book Oh, my daughter. She's always asking me for book recs, and I gave her this, and I said, "There's a line in there where you said something like, our parents were alive when people weren't even sure about if climate change was real yet, or something like that." I've obviously butchered the line, but that's using that sentence and setting it really just a generation ahead, more or less, was haunting. It was so haunting. So I'm curious about your vision for the effects of climate change a generation or two from now. And did you do granular work like research or projections? Like, were you in the scientist space here, or were you just in the imagination space, where you just followed kind of an obvious trajectory of just the rising sea levels?
I was in the scientist space
Okay.
for sure. I mean, it's always both, right?
Yeah.
It's in fiction. I get to play hard and loose with those facts. But this is part of the fun thing for me about doing this is getting to get interested in a topic and then dive really deep into all the research, all the thoughts that are happening around it. So, and it's not hard to find, here's the thing about this book. So I started writing this in, let me get this right, 2016.
Okay.
Okay. Like the early fall of 2016. And so the things that have happened in the world, in the environment between then and when I finished it in early 2020
Yeah.
is astounding.
Yeah.
When I started writing it, it was definitely near future, but it felt a little bit further future. And by the time this book came out, it was really up against that line of, wow, this feels like tomorrow, or our children. So, yeah.
Yeah. The way in which you wrote this story, where the people that chose to stay as opposed to moving inland, of course, I find myself going, just move where there's land. But, then we wouldn't have a book. So I wanted to solve their problems. Like, you could let's go 100 miles inland. But I think it's interesting from an imaginative perspective that this is highly possible, that there will be adaptations to the shifting and changing earth, and some people will want to choose to stay there regardless. And so the world that you built, in which those who stayed adapted and found a new way to live, was just fascinating. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the process of creating a world of water like that, and how you decided to move your characters through it all.
Yeah. I mean, I think aside from that original seed of the preparation of a storm, the next piece of the book for me was definitely this water-bound world, and someone taking their canoe through a channel that used to be a street. So that piece of the book came to me really quickly, and I was like, okay, how do I get from here to here? This is an interesting story conundrum of what's the middle gonna be? Yeah, I mean, and a lot of this is kind of based in the reality of Florida itself, which is that Florida was largely swampland, and we came in and drained it and dredged it and developed it. But that's not what that land wants to do. That's Florida is mostly on top of limestone, which is very porous. So the groundwater wants to rise. And you know, I live in LA and it's like the same over here. Like, this is a desert. We're not supposed to live here. You know,
Right.
like,
That's right.
um,
It's inhospitable. Yes.
yes. And recently we've like
Yeah.
learned the hard way.
Yeah.
But this is the thing too of this conundrum that is happening and will just continue to happen, right? Of like living in places that aren't for us, that aren't accommodating to us anymore in the way that maybe they used to be. It's it's funny, isn't it? It's so easy to be, you know, tucked into your safe home and be like, just move, like just go somewhere else. But the more research I did and the more I thought about it, and even living where I live right now, the more I think you kind of are able to put yourself in those shoes and realize like these are people's homes.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
invest like their whole lives in these spaces, and it's no small thing to just to move, you know, to somewhere a little easier. And I think we're seeing that more and more. Even just like, as I was saying, since 2015, like thinking about the hurricanes that have happened since then, in that part of the world, but elsewhere also.
Yeah.
And like the devastation that follows and the commitment to rebuild, right, is so strong. And yeah, I really understand it. It's a hard, I think this is I think this is and is going to be even more so kind of a central conflict in the years to come.
Certainly.
Of like, yeah, where is safe?
Yeah.
Answer kind of nowhere. You know, like recently we're seeing all of these forest fires in Canada and like these billowing clouds of smoke covering these states that, you know, were supposed to be climate refuges, like this flood in North Carolina. Like, I mean, the list could go
I
on.
can.
So it's tricky.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting how sometimes a novel can crack through maybe what in another channel would just be kind of scientific rhetoric and facts and data and analysis, which can sometimes fall on deaf ears. Whereas a story can, it makes it human. It makes it possible. It paints a picture of climate despair in a way that readers can really grab onto. And so it's an interesting little soldier in the war against climate change, and it's an effective one. Besides this constant theme in the book about adaptation, just constantly adapting to an ever shifting environment, there is another thread of community and of connection, for better or for worse. And I found those pieces to be some of the ones that I kept thinking about over and over. And, you know, particularly the relationship between Wanda and Phyllis, which I loved. And I loved the way that you portrayed it. And also that it was complicated, that Phyllis instilled in her an isolation that later she had to figure out if that was the trustworthy thing to build on, or if she could move into connection. And like watching her peer at the little group, you know, from afar and wishing to be a part of it, and while also being scared of them, was really a fascinating bit of writing. So I'd like to hear more about Phyllis and how you felt about her and her role in the story.
Yeah, I love Phyllis so much. I think she's maybe my favorite character. I really wanted to highlight this relationship that had nothing to do with blood relationship. Like I really wanted to kind of explore this idea of genealogy and ancestry and like what we owe to the generations that come, even if they're not ours, you know, like I'm don't plan on having children, right? Like it's not an experience I feel drawn to. But that doesn't mean that I don't like owe the future
Yeah.
generation something. And so that was kind of my my avenue to explore that idea, and to get like a glimpse of what because it's always going to be a little of both. It can never like relationships are never completely good or completely bad. Like
Sure.
we're always kind of passing on some things that maybe it's time to outgrow, right? And also some lessons that it's time to grow into. So yeah, that's kind of where I was coming from with the Phyllis
It was
storyline.
a great relationship and
Thank you.
vivid and tender. And I, at one point in the book, Wanda just has so many losses. It's just
Hmm.
loss after loss. There's a lot of death.
The body count is
The,
high.
the body count is high. And I was like, damn it, she can't catch a break. Oh,
Yeah.
God, what's next? So I was delighted that you gave her love. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for giving her love. That was,
Of
it
course.
lifted,
Yeah.
it lifted the experience just a hair and made us so glad
Yeah.
that she fought through some of that training,
Yeah.
well-intentioned training, of course, by Phyllis, but to stay isolated, that she overcame that. And that was like a lovely, also storyline and relatable. I mean, we're not living in, near future Florida, but plenty of your readers will understand the impulse to have to battle being self-protective or being
Hmm.
like vulnerable with a human. Like
Yeah.
what do I do here? Like I want to be safe, but I want to be loved. And so can you talk about that sort of back third writing
Hmm.
when we're finding community again and love and there's a humanity that sort of lifts up out of the water, really?
Yeah. I knew that there would have to be a good ending for Wanda. There's so much brutality
Yeah.
and tough stuff in her younger years,
Hmm.
and her later years as well. And I really struggled with that as I was writing the book. I was like, is this too much? But it felt important. It didn't feel gratuitous in the sense that like I could take it away and the story would still be the same. Like it felt really integral to what was happening, and how to get her to that world, that like water bound world. But I always had it in the back of my head that like this has to end well for Wanda to make this
Yes.
journey worth it. And
I love
so
it.
yeah, it was like even
Yeah.
for me as the writer, because like this is like I spent years inside this world,
Yeah.
and it's taxing. It's hard to
Yeah.
like sit down and write every day and be like, whoa,
Yeah.
this is a hard
For
this is a
sure.
hard place to exist in. So it felt like such a relief to get to those
I
pages
bet
with
it did.
Bird Dog and to like
Yeah.
let them just like have
Yeah.
this beautiful queer love story
Yeah.
that there's like no, I think queer love stories often have this element of tragedy because of their
Oh, sure.
queerness.
Yeah.
And so I felt really, really intentional about wanting that to just be pure, just
Yeah.
be like wonderful.
Yeah. It's tragic
Yeah.
enough that they are living in a sunken city.
Yeah,
So
totally.
that's
It's
enough.
good. We're good.
Let's just let the relationship be pure.
Yeah.
I loved those whole sections. And I also loved your touch of what is the word? Magic, kind of. Yeah,
Hmm.
you've got a little bit of a supernatural. It's just it's a tender little through line.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I can you talk about your decision to include a bit of what do you call that? What's the term?
I guess we call it magical realism because
There.
it's threaded
Yeah,
into,
yeah,
even though it's kind of not quite realism, it's
yeah.
tricky. I think there's
Sure.
you could argue with me about it, but
Okay.
I in the same way as with the love story, I was like, okay, this needs some levity. Like, how do I bring this up just like half a notch? And originally in my first draft, that wasn't there at all.
Oh, interesting.
When I was writing, I was conceiving of the phrase "the light pirate" because people often ask me about the title, like, where does that come from? And it's actually from like an earlier idea I had for the book in which Wanda begins to pirate electricity in that later part of the book and is like, steering electricity from other places to her place. And that's like a skill she learned from Kirby, but it just like it wasn't working. It felt too grim. And so, but like the more I thought about it, it was already in the book, it was already there. Like the way the hurricane has this sort of almost voice in the first section, and the way that I had already been describing the landscape, it just like, it was so easy to draw that out of what I already had. And it felt like just this really kind of gentle way to bring a little levity, a little literal light back into such a dark, dark place.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved that piece of it, and I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I love that inclusion so much. I would love to see like a follow-up book with another part of the country in the same time period. Like, what about folks who stayed like in the desert? What does their life look like, or whatever? I'm like, oh my gosh, this could go on and on and on with this trajectory of what might life look like after climate change has really like ravaged and made unlivable parts of the country and with the world for that matter. But I'd love to hear what it has been like to receive such critical acclaim for the book and for this story. And it's just had so much amazing attention. And obviously the readers loved it. And so, that's a novelist's hope. Of course, you never hope to write a book that nobody reads. But I mean, wow. Wow. I mean, this one really went far. Has it been really exciting to see it like live out in the world?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's always really exciting. It's okay. I'm going to be really honest
Okay.
though. It's always exciting and it's always really scary also. Like I mean, I didn't decide to be a writer to be seen, and like this kind of interaction
Yeah.
that has become part of my job, which
That's
I'm
right.
loving and enjoying, and I'm so happy to be here with you, but like it's not my comfort zone.
I get it.
Excuse me. And so it's been a little bit scary at times and also really exciting, and I'm just happy to see the book have its life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think my, like, being an avatar of the book is, like, complicated for me, but seeing the book do its thing is awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, incredible. It is so true because in the olden days, writing is such a solitary profession and writers just got to write their little books and just stay in their little caves and the world would take it from there. But that is not the way it is to be a modern author at all.
It's really not.
No, you got to polish up the microphone. I mean, hell, it is a whole situation. Well, I'll tell you that we are just so enjoying it in book club. Like it's so thought provoking, and which I know that you know this, but it spurs on so many interesting conversations out of the fiction world into the real world. And it's daunting to think about how even more urgent it is today than when you wrote it or started it 9 years ago. That's pretty fast. 9 years is pretty fast.
Yeah. Oh God, when you said 9, my heart just like
Yeah.
jumped a little bit. I was like, has it really been that long?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been weird to
Yeah.
see things unfold. This is like the funny thing about like the near future,
Uh-huh.
right? Like
Yeah.
if you stew on it long enough, it just becomes the
We're in it.
present.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. So we'd love to hear what you're working on right now. Writers are always writing, of course.
hmm
What are you cooking up? What can we expect from you next?
I actually just finished a new book,
Nice.
and I still have to do some edits,
Mm,
but I'm really excited about it. It's called Ruins. It's
mm,
about an archaeologist who gets a really important unseen artifact and is trying to use it to propel interest in this dig that she wants to do.
mm.
And I can't really say anything else about it, or
Uh-huh.
I'll give it away. I
Uh-huh.
like haven't quite figured out how
Yeah.
to talk about it yet.
Oh, fun.
Yeah,
Cool storyline.
yeah.
Completely different world.
hmm
When is it slated to be released?
I think we're looking at March 2026.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Right on. That's exciting. I love that. And do you already have the next idea you're noodling?
I'm actually going to circle back to an adaptation idea for The Light Pirate as a
Oh,
TV show. It's
yeah.
something I've been working on for a while. But like as you said, like wanting to see what's happening in
Hmm.
other parts of the world, wanting to like go a little further with
Mm,
how this community is developing, was really on my mind when I finished it, and I was kind of debating whether there was a sequel that I wanted to do, and
yeah.
then I thought, actually, I think it would be cool in another medium to let
Ooh,
it
that's
expand
exciting.
there.
Would you have
Yeah.
history there, and
hmm
you know that path, and that feels really special to get to bring the world you created on paper to the
hmm
screen. Is I can see it. Like I could see it in my
Yeah.
mind's eye. Like it would be a fascinating like film to create or
Yeah.
series, however it would shake out for you. But
It
great
it's been
idea.
fun to work on. Fingers crossed. I think it's
Yeah.
really hard to like know whether I like what happened with my previous
Yeah.
book being made into a film felt so like lightning does not strike twice kind of thing. Like that was just
Oh,
out of line. I was
yeah.
like, what is happening?
It's so exciting.
So I like, yeah, I try not to have
Uh-huh.
expectations about that kind of thing.
Like if you could pick just no
Oh
boundaries
no.
or barriers, like who would you love to cast?
I'm so bad at this
You
game.
are
Yeah, I'm not good at this game at all. I will have to just like pass on the
defer.
question because I
Okay.
like my brain just like shuts
It just
down.
breaks. You don't know any actors in the whole world when asked.
Yeah.
My book club is very good at this game. We have
Okay, well
cast,
you tell
yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We have cast many, many, many of our books in our brains.
Okay.
Like we think we're great at
I
it. We
love
feel like
that.
fantastic casting directors. And so I'll put the question
Please do.
to the
I'm
book
curious
club.
what you come
Yeah,
up
I'll
with.
let you know what we think. Um, Fantastic. Last question. Just, I always love to get recommendations from our writers because writers are such good readers.
Oh.
We'd love to hear what you're loving lately or a favorite, a recent favorite. It could be an old time favorite, one that you love to revisit, whatever. But just if you were going to tell us, these are some good book recommendations. What you got?
I love the way you phrase this question because people are always asking me what my favorite books are, like of
Mm-hmm.
all time. But recent favorites,
Mm-hmm.
immediately what popped into my mind was Piranesi by Susanna Clark, which was
Mm,
just like such a unique book. It really blew me away. I think I read it like 6 months ago and I'm still
mm,
thinking about it. Um, Let me do one more.
mm-hmm.
Oh man, I'm such a huge fan of Katie Kitamura.
Mm.
Um, all her books, but she just came out with a new one called Audition, which I'm about to
Audition.
start reading. Yeah,
Okay. I'm going to pull that up on my computer right now.
yeah.
Um, okay. Awesome. So sometimes I find like the next book club book from recommendations from our authors
Ooh,
because they're
fun.
always reading such great writers and you have
Yeah.
such a keen eye for a good story and great characters. Anyway, thank you for going back in time with me back to The Light Pirate. I realize this is not your most recent project, but it has been such a delight to read in this community of readers. And it's just, you're such a great writer. And I'm thrilled to know about your next book. We cannot wait. We'll just line up to read it. Obviously, you're such a good storyteller.
Thank you, Jen.
And cheering it on. We'd love to see it on our TVs. So
Okay.
that would be so fantastic. Oh, gosh. I hope all of the wind is at your back on that
Thank you.
project.
Fingers crossed.
That's
Yeah.
right. And when it gets greenlit, come to us and we'll help you cast. Okay?
I will.
We're your people.
100%.
Okay. So great to meet you. Thank you so much, Lily, for just your time and spending a few minutes with me on Zoom, which is now your author duties, as you know.
Of course, this was really fun, and thank you for reading.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, I love to hear it.
All right.